Good evening. I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work and dedication by the detectives and from the agencies involved in the Winnebago Boone County Integrity Task Force. The agencies included on this investigation include the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office, Boone County Sheriff's Office, Loves Park Police Department, and the Illinois State Police. I appreciate the collaboration between the agencies on this case and those 15+ detectives taking on additional roles in addition to their own regular duties and caseloads within their own jurisdiction. I just want to take the time to thank the sheriffs and the chiefs that allow their detectives to help with the investigation of these type of cases. So.
I would just like to echo what Commander Davidson's comments were. These investigations are never easy. However, under his leadership and the members of this task force, these guys go about doing what needs to be done to investigate these officer-involved shootings and ultimately turning that information over to the state's attorney's office for review. So I would like to echo his comments and thanking all the men and women of the task force for their hard work in this case.
I'll be happy to answer any questions that I am able to answer for you.
Now that this investigation is wrapped up, does that mean Officer McNeese is back on? I was under the impression he was on paid leave of some type.
I will direct you to the Rockford Police Department for those details, but my understanding is that Officer McNeese has been back at work.
And you mentioned that Officer McNeese knew of the potential of Jones being a suspect for that murder back on, knowing that on October 2nd. If you can kind of talk maybe why the charge came in November, that there was that, I guess, that delay or that separation between, you know, officers having that information and the charge, I guess, coming later.
Okay, so what I will say about that is that investigations take as long as they take. So whenever an investigation is completed, it's brought over to my office, and in these particular cases, murder investigations are personally reviewed by myself. I do have assistance with my criminal bureau supervisors, but I personally make all murder charging decisions. So when that information is brought over to me, obviously it's given priority, and that's when decisions are made.
If there was, I guess, video that was reviewed in this process, is that something that will be at some point released to the public, or something that, I guess, can be at some point shared?
All of the investigative materials will be shared, as I indicated, to Mr. Jones's attorney. However, access by anyone else outside of receiving that information in the court will not be granted. And obviously, because that could impact Mr. Jones's right to receive a fair trial. So as in any case, for example, we do not release the details of information. We provide you with the information to support the charges, because the charges become public documents. But beyond that, we do not provide details regarding specific investigations or statements made by particular witnesses. And it's for that reason. The proper forum for that information is during the criminal court process in the courtroom.
And during one of the last court appearances, the attorney for Mr. Jones had raised allegations or concerns that he, in his eyes, saw that there were witnesses that were not included, I guess, in this report. I guess if you can speak to those allegations that he raised.
Well, again, you know, it's interesting that the attorney raised that to the press, but my office was never called to tell me that he had witnesses to this date. When I learned that information from the reporters, I did pass that on to Commander Davidson, and they did follow up on that information. So our goal is to follow up on any information that comes to our knowledge, but if we are not notified about it, then we can't follow up. But we did take a proactive role in seeking out the attorney after he made those statements to the press.
And during one of the last court appearances, the attorney for Mr. Jones had raised allegations or concerns that he, in his eyes, saw that there were witnesses that were not included, I guess, in this report. I guess if you can speak to those allegations that he raised.
Well, again,
Just a couple days ago, you guys released warrants for Mr. Jones on some of that murder investigation. Is there any update that you could provide on that? Did he eventually get found and booked, or what happened there?
Yeah, yes, I can provide you some updated information. On these charges today, there was an additional warrant issued with $1 million bond. Mr. Jones was due in court before Judge Clifford today on unrelated charges. He did not appear, so there was an additional warrant issued for his failure to appear with $1 million bond. So he remains at large, so anyone who has information regarding the whereabouts of Tyris Jones, please call Crime Stoppers or your local law enforcement agency.
And you've spoken to, Officer McNeese kind of perceiving the threat, and that's, what led to him, opening fire. If you can kind of talk to maybe why he was the only officer on scene, or why others didn't open, fire. Was it, due to proximity or his vantage point? Whatever you can share on that.
Well, the review centered around the officer that discharged their weapon. And obviously the investigation showed that he was the only officer that discharged his weapon. And based upon the review of the materials, I believe from his vantage point that he believed that Mr. Jones had a weapon when he had approached that vehicle, the motorist. And again, under the laws in the state of Illinois and the United States Supreme Court, Mr. Jones was already a fleeing felon. Mr. Jones had committed the offenses of aggravated attempt to elude police officer, and at that time it was reasonable for Officer McNeese to believe that Mr. Jones was attempting to commit another forcible felony, that being ag vehicular hijacking, even though no weapon was found in his hand. But based upon the circumstances, it was reasonable for the officer to believe that, and that is the standard that these cases are viewed under pursuant to U.S. Supreme Court laws and the laws of the state of Illinois.